Hi, hi. Thank you for joining us, spending your late afternoon with us, Kealiʻi and myself. Um, there's a number of people still coming in. We do have some announcements, and let me put my glasses on so I can read this bugger. Okay. Okay, as we're letting you in, we only have an hour with Kealiʻi, so definitely we want to give him the prime spot to share his world of Kōkō Pu'upu'u in 2020. With that said, we would love to have your questions. You know, good questions sometimes help steer the conversation in ways we've never previously thought. So put your questions in chat. We cannot say that we're going to answer all of those questions. In fact, I can tell you we won't, because there's just a lot of people for an hour to meet that. But if you have some serious inquiries, please in your chat include your email, and we'll forward the entire chat transcript to Kealiʻi, and he'll peruse it whenever he can. He's one of the most busiest people I know. So if he has the time, he'll peruse it. And if any of those questions stand out and stick out and call in, and then, there possibly could be a chance where he will contact you and further that discussion. But with that said, Tiffany, do I need to, did I miss anything else before I introduce Kealiʻi and hand it over to him?
In the chat, if you guys could please include your email addresses so he can get back to you.
All righty, thank you. A little bit about Mōkaulele, this program. My name is Taupori Tangaro, and I work out of both Hawaii Community College in Hilo and the University of Hawaii in Hilo. And I have a really great opportunity to grow, to contribute to the growth and sustainability, the vibrant sustainability of Indigenous leadership. And there are many ways to do this, and one way is through the arts. Arts is an interesting platform, and to identify individuals or individuals within a community. Art is the aesthetic form in indigenous cultures worldwide. Is very close to our spiritual health. We use art to commune with that part of us, the spirit part, and so we put a lot of energy in preserving our traditional arts, our material arts. And in 2020, these arts have become more than just an artifact of an aesthetic process. It's become, for many of us, a metaphor for our own growth. So with that said, I want to introduce Kealiʻi Reichel. And I know him for many, many years. And in those many years, he's become world renowned, and it's a little intimidating sometimes, but you know what? The Kealiʻi I know is the one that he still is, and that's the real country bumpkin sometimes kind of a person. And so, he has this polished stage presence, and then mingled with this bumpkin from the country, and together it creates a charm. And if you know hula is about the charm. So I want to introduce Mr. Charming Kealiʻi Reichel, and he's going to speak to us about Kōkō Pu'upu'u. Some ideas, it might go in different directions, but this time is for him. And again, if you have questions, include them in the chat with your email. And other than that, if you're just here to enjoy it and to, our job is to plant a consideration, to plant a thought. And if we've done that, we've been highly successful. So, Kealiʻi Reichel, take it away, buddy.
E ka nei ka hei, e ka nei ka pukaula, e ka nei ka ho'olele. E ho mai ka lino, maki, ka umi, Na ke kōkō, pu'upu'u, pu'alu kōkō, pauku kōkō, oni, oni. A po ke au ka po, a o ka moa kane, a kōkō ka moa wahine. E ala e tāna. Okay, got that out of my system. Have to, for me, a big part of this is recognizing specific kupuna who help this particular platform forward. And so first and foremost, mahalo to Kana and all of his cohorts, but also to Pu'upu'u, Mr. Taupuri Tankaro. O'oi vale, eliki me ka'u I ha'i aku ia oi mamua. O'oi vale no ka mea lou ia ke ia waha, a huki I ke ia wahi, yeah? Huki au I ke ia wahi. So mahalo no ia oi. You're so bossy, I tell you. Okay, so mahalo for having us come to today. And I think we're talking about Kōkō Pu'upu'u. And for some people, you know, they don't know what that is. So Kōkō Pu'upu'u is really a type of fancy carrying net that in some instances was reserved for ali'i. And we'll be talking a little bit about the construction of that. But I wanted to talk about perhaps how I got started in this, yeah? And so I've always had a knot propensity from when I was teenager. And so I went to Lahaina Luna High School, and I was in art class, and one of the classes was on macrame. And so the teacher recognized that I had a propensity for it. And so as a young teen, she hooked me up, and I became an apprentice to a macrame artist who was working on a 30 by 30 foot piece for a hotel lobby. And so several days a week, I would go to her studio, and she would say, okay, I need 350 of these knots. And once you do that particular row, then you need to twist the knots and make them spiral. And so over a period of a few months, that particular thing got into my fingers. And over the years, you know, I put it on the side, like with many things, as we're moving along our life's journey. And then every so often, it would like kahea aku, yeah, and call me to come back and do it. Fast forward to a time when I was working at the Maui Historical Society Bailey House Museum, and I was attracted to netting. Not so much fish nets, because that's different, yeah? Carrying nets, the various kinds, the pu'upu'u, of course, and the pu'alu. And we realized that very few people were doing it. And so I tried my hand at it. I opened the Arts and Crafts of Hawaii book, because you get plenty of instructions inside here. Yeah. And I would look, and I was like, okay. And I kind of sort of figured it out, but I had no guidance on this. So one day we had a craft fair, and I had to go pick up one kupuna. Her name was Kealoha Camacho. And she was known as a weaver, as a lauhala weaver. And she's from Nahiku. And so I went to her house to go pick her up because she couldn't drive. And she said, come inside, come inside. She was still getting ready. And I walked into her house, and her walls were filled with Pu'upu'u. And I just went, oh my gosh. And so she came out, and I said, Auntie, you made all this? And she goes, oh yeah, I'm making one. And I was on the kitchen table. She goes, well, you like learn? I was like, yeah, I like learn. And so she goes, come. So she sat down, and she started making. Yeah, she already had more than half of it done. And what struck me, she made about 4 or 5 knots. What struck me was there was a movement. It was almost choreographed, the way how she did it. And she goes, okay, so Bombay, you come to my house. and we sit down, I teach you, but we gotta go. So I took her to the craft fair with full intention of sitting with her and learning. And she passed a few months after that, and I never got the chance to do so. But what stuck with me was the particular articulation of her fingers, the winding movements, and that's what stuck with me. So I took all of that movement and articulation and went back to the book and looked at how the knots were made. And all of a sudden it came, yeah, and stuff. And so I started to kind of try to figure out the basic Kōkō, Pu'upu'u, and then all of the other types of Kōkō, Pu'upu'u, or Pu'upu'u based variants of the knot. Yeah, so that's kind of how things got started. And I had put that away again for a little while because I got a little bit busy doing concerts and doing all kinds of stuff and going kalalau all over the place. And then fast forward to just about 11 years ago, I was on a Hawaiian Airlines flight, and in the Hawaiian Airlines magazine, there was an article on Uncle Val Ching and how he was doing Kōkō Pu'upu'u work. And so it hit me like a brick at that particular time. And I was on my way to Japan. So, I read it, I was like, I think I know how to do this. So I got to Japan, I bought cordage, and within a day, I'd finished one small Kōkō Pu'upu'u. And I thought to myself, I should show this to this man, Uncle Ben. And just so happened, and I didn't know, I was looking for him on Facebook. We happened to be friends, and I didn't know. And so I sent him a picture. Took him 2 weeks to get back to me because he was kind of a little bit shocked that that I would contact him. Long story short, came back home, went to his house, and he was the one who showed me how to finesse. I had the technique, I had the aesthetic, but I didn't have the finesse. And so I mahalo him for showing me how to connect to the chord for preparation to make the Kōkō Pu'upu'u. And then from after that, it was just crazy stuff because, that's how I am. I'm a little bit OCD, a little bit the kind. Yeah. So then fast forward a little bit, I was posting a few things on my Facebook page, and then Mr. Taupori Tangaro contacted me and said, Inahiki, I would love to learn. I was like, okay, yeah, okay. So I went to his house. From morning till about late afternoon, he was one of the first people that I taught that was able to go from the beginning, from the piko, all the way to the end to the handles. And I wasn't surprised because we have similar interesting attributes. And but then Taupori took it to the next level. Yeah. And as a kumu who teaches, whether it be hula, whether it be this or other things, the end result, whether it takes a day or whether it takes months or whether it takes years, the end result is that you hope that whoever you teach, puka'aku, yeah, will be able to match up and surpass, yeah, in a different way from the person who taught them. And so that's kind of why I'm here, because Brada, I'm pointing this way. Yeah, Brada has moved into places with Kōkō Pu'upu'u that I find just absolutely astounding. So anyway, enough about me. How about you guys? I don't know if I hit any of the points you wanted, Mr. Tangoro, but
Kealiʻi, in the light, you hit many points as we speak the same language, and there's a number of people that speak the same language. Our dialect might be a little bit different, but you just got to hit a few major points, and it makes sense to us. One of them is your first exposure, and then interestingly, that was a trigger. And then the first opportunity to grow that trigger is the macrame. You never went straight to Kōkō Pu'upu'u. And so sometimes we have to deviate, you know, and because, you know, at the end of the day, we're working with chord. And I think once, if the chord is in our DNA and we pick up any chord, it's going to line up. Even if sometimes the chord we pick up is not the one we're wanting to first do. Sometimes we, you know, everybody, you know, I know young hula dancers, they want to get straight into the holoku and dance mine, but sometimes they got to start as a hula noho doing, you know, just sitting there, and, you know, you cannot just get, you know, overnight. The other thing I think was quite poignant is that you hung on, yeah, but there was that one, Tutu Camacho, I believe you said. You entered into her world. I mean, of all the people that could have picked her up, it was you. So you got to ask the question, why you? That's the kind of questions Hawaiians ask. Why you at that moment? And she gave you exactly what you needed. See, some people say, Mina, she passed before I could have learned, but she gave it exactly what you needed to challenge you to the next step. And I think sometimes when we get too much, then we get oversatiated, and we don't, sometimes it's good to keep the person hungry, because when you're hungry, you become desperate to learn. And so I think you hit a number of parts. And, you know, also the idea, and this is where leadership, sometimes when it's ego-centric, sometimes leaders have a difficult time when they see their students matching and going beyond. So sometimes they contain that back. There's nothing, whether it's canoes, hula, farming, fishing, Pu'upu'u, nothing in the Hawaiian world that I know of where the teacher holds the student back, the serious student. It's always master it, take it where you need to go, you know, take it further. And I think that's refreshing. Because how else will it evolve and live? If the arts don't evolve, then they're going to perish. They become, you know, illegitimate after a while. Nobody needs them. So you did hit a number of points. Can you speak to us about how, you know, you had one student and then another student, and then before you know it, the asks, as you begin to put yourself out there, the world begins to recognize what it is that you're doing. Nobody questions, interestingly, nobody questions kahili. They all know that that's Hawaiian. Feather lace, they all know that's Hawaiian. But sometimes you show people kanaka, Pu'upu'u, they ask, what kind of culture is that? So Pu'upu'u is not one of those very forward, very visual, it is now, but it wasn't in the past. Many people didn't know it was Hawaiian. So can you speak about the growth of Pu'upu'u? How are you meeting the asks that's coming to you from your community? How do you determine yes, no, maybe so? What are some of the, because you're having to be accountable to the ancestors of Pu'upu'u. What is your criteria that you set to help protect that part of the culture so it doesn't become craft, that it remains within that sacred domain of ancestral connections?
Well, you're right. You know, early on, while I was still rediscovering this, and you know, social media has good facets and not so good facets, and we have to be able to navigate that. And so, one of the things I did was I treat Facebook as my journal, my personal journal, and that's my living room. And so someday when I'm gone, this piece of my life is kind of like an archive, yeah. And so people started to ask, oh, you know, I like learn. I didn't feel qualified because I was still in the rediscovery and discovery stages myself. And so oftentimes when I would say no, based on that, not based because, you know, I never like teach you per se or you per se. You know, it was, I didn't feel qualified to formally teach somebody. As a kumuhula, I recognize formal teaching and informal teaching, and I wasn't comfortable with either to do it. And so people would get mad, by virtue of, their argument was by virtue, a Hawaiian, I got to learn this. And I was like, why you like learn this? What reason do you have to learn this? Well, and they cannot answer. And if they cannot answer to my specifications, and I have specifications, I have my own idea of what can be, what and how things can be taught. And I say that because I am 18 months away from being 60 years old. Okay? My filter over here in front, my waha, is thin now. Yeah? And stuff. And kumuhula are thin the waha, the thin that they're covering anyway. Yeah? And so it was mostly because what Taupudi said, being accountable to those who came before, I didn't feel I was qualified to teach because I was still working on it. And I didn't want to bring the quality of this particular art form, this particular connectivity down to the craft level. Yeah. There are certain aesthetics that come with it. There are certain techniques that come with it. There is a spiritual, internal, and external connectivity that comes with working with chords. That's why aha to us is so important. Yeah, it is the cord that binds us. It is the tie that binds us. And all the connotations that come with the word aha, and all the connotations that come with the word kaula, yeah, are all intertwined into the making of Pu'upu'u. And so that was my big hesitation in that particular arena. And of course, I still didn't feel qualified when certain people asked, but that was my choice to make at that particular time as to who I was comfortable with to share whatever I had at the time. I wasn't ready to share it with the masses because I have no control. Yeah, and Kumuhola, they notoriously control. So no difference here with that. Fast forward, I was asked to do a cohort on Maui a few years back, and I kept saying no. I'm not sure how to do this, and so I finally decided to do it, and I had to create a curriculum. How do I take this bunch of students, and it had to be only 3 or 4. I prefer one-on-one with Pu'upu'u because it's such an up-close kind of thing. It's not like I can get in front of 25 people and teach this. It has to be done very, very close together. And so I had to create a curriculum going from the very basics of learning what kinds of cordage we have, what works best. Start with the easiest of the nets, Kōkō, yeah, which is the most common type of carrying net that we have. And if they can get all of that stuff done, then I would move them to the next level. Just like in any other art form. Just like in hula. You're not going to go straight to hula pahu. You got to learn all that stuff. Yeah. And so making that curriculum, and then in the making of that curriculum, there's a lot of self-discovery. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't know about myself. How do I bring this art form back into the spiritual connectivity that is aha? And so I had to relearn, I had to actually learn about our cordage deity, yeah, our cordage kupuna, who is Kana. Yeah, and all of the things that he is in the form of cordage, because without that kinolau, there is no net. Yeah, and so how do we reconnect to the attributes or to his story and bring him to the forefront so that we can connect and make it deeper for us? Yeah, with that. And then looking at his mo'olelo, he stretches. Yeah, he reaches the heavens. He goes across from over here all the way from Molokai all the way to Kona to get fed. Yeah, and so I had to stretch. I had to stretch myself. Yeah. Um, and in the construction of the Pu'upu'u, again, like I mentioned before, you start with the piko. All life forms start with the piko. Yeah, that piko got to be pa'a before you can actually move on to other parts of your net or your life. It's the genesis of most things, and even in a lot of art forms, lauhala weaving. A lot of times you start with the piko. Yeah, with ie weaving, you start with the piko. Yeah, Pu'upu'u, you start with the piko. The umeke, the ipu that you put inside, the piko of the Pu'upu'u or pu'alu got to line up to the piko of that umeke. Yeah. So all of those things have to align, and to do it in a formal fashion, I had to like kind of figure it out. And thanks to the hula training that and kuahu practices, yeah, we can glean all of these different kinds of practices and try to create a formal way to teach Pu'upu'u that perhaps wasn't necessary before, but in today's day and time, because we have to, so that there is a stronger connectivity. Prayer chants were created for this cohort. The end result of this was you can make your kōkō, the pu'alu or the pu'upu'u, just make, and and it can be in the regular world, and then you give them the tools to connect deeper through pule and through ritual, and you make that and you infuse that particular kōkō pu'upu'u, and so it elevates it. Yeah, you give it as a gift, you give it as a whatever. So the cohort had the ability to pick and choose. Yeah, because if you ritualize everything all the time, you become tired. Yeah, you got to have some shallow once in a while. Yeah, give your human self a break. Yeah, and so with that Kōkō Pu'upu'u, at the end of this cohort, they had to choose a leader in the community, a leader in their life that gave them much to get them through their journey. And so they had to create a Kōkō Pu'upu'u as a gift, fraught with ceremony and ritual and chant. And then at the end of that, present it with a name chant. They had to name them, yeah, and give it to that person unencumbered. Yeah, and so it worked for us. And it's, if I do it again, once all this craziness is done, then it will morph probably as it should. It should move along and morph and stretch, just like the Kōkō. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that sure did. And then you also breached upon an important feature. And we as hula people know this because we do it all the time. And I think sometimes it's mostly unconscious. We're maybe conscious to a degree. But whenever we present our dances, we always begin with the most ancient. And typically the ones we inherited from the previous generations. It's almost bedrock in the world of hula. The hulas that we treasure the most are the ones we've inherited. And then of course we use that as the model to build new hulas. But we always start off with, generally the kahiko, and then we move into the awana. We always seem to start off from as far back as we can go. And we see this even when the kapa makers, they didn't just you couldn't just get straight to the fabric without learning the genealogy of the kapa. So it seems like this is a trend in this leadership development. When the world was just Hawaiian and everything was Hawaiian, we didn't need these levels of articulation. Yeah, it was just factored in. It was just a default mechanism. You stepped into it, never had to question it. But we live in a kind of a mixed world, so we got to define what is not, what is a half Hawaiian, what is and because we're largely mixed, and but we're finding that Pu'upu'u, when we use Pu'upu'u, when Kealiʻi's desire to begin Pu'upu'u was for an inner calling, not necessarily to teach leaders or to grow leaders, or he never saw himself. Most of us never see ourselves in this service. We somehow end up there. But you know, the thing is, he inherited the book, the some instruction from, and then the people in the community fed and helped define that. And then there was a need in the community, and he began to have to meet that need. But he did something that is incredible, and which is cornerstone. None of his previous teachers attached it to, they may have mentioned kana or, but it was really just its piece. It didn't come with the big story behind of it. And it's like when we learn hula, sometimes we don't know who's the hula from, what is it really about? We just kind of learn the hula, and eventually those things get disclosed. But what Kealiʻi did, and we're finding that we're having to do today, because we're in a different time for Hawaii, is we have to make the connection. We inherit the artifact, and the connection's still sleeping. We have to wake up that connection. For it to be truly, again, craft has a place. Yeah, when you do craft, it can get you an uncommitted balance to your life. Yeah, you can just do it very surface, very topical. Just get your creative juices. We're not talking craft. We're talking this kind of culture that's in your marrow. It's genetic, it's DNA. Some of it's been sleeping for generations. And there's all these personal prohibitions or socialized prohibitions. So you got to decolonize out of that. And then we find that, okay, people need it, but we can't just give it. So we got to recreate the culture to get it to the next generation, because we're unwilling to just send that artifact forward. So this is our great opportunity as emerging leaders or established leaders or closet case leaders, because there's a lot of closet case leaders out there. They help. You never see them, but they're the ones that's helping the youth define themselves and challenging them forward. But we have to create that accountability sometimes. And hula is, I'm biased to hula because that's all I truly know. But I do know that we have to create a lot of connection. So we inherit the artifact. Our job is to redefine that connection. Now, kana is not the only akua or aumakua associated with the cord. There are many others. I assume when you have a people with 40,000 gods, you expect at least 2 more cord-related deities somewhere down there. I only know kana. Kana made sense to Kealiʻi and I, because it's a deity that connects both Maui Island and Hawaii Island. And because I was looking to use, I told Kealiʻi, I like learn Pu'upu'u, but not for make net carriers. He go, and of course, a little bit drama, yeah, he said, why, what you gonna do with this? I said, I like make clothes. He goes, what? I said, I like make a'ahu. And then he started to get really nervous. And I tell you, this is the sacrifice that we have to put through. So sometimes when you see the finished product, you go, oh, that was an easy arrival. It wasn't. When I told him that I wanted to make a'ahu, he wasn't prepared for that. He came to teach me how to make Pu'upu'u. So he had to go home and talk to put his world in order again, because his first student was going renegade day 1. But I couldn't wait to wear it.
Together. That's the first thing he did. He finished it and he goes, chaluk. And then he will go, put him on his head. Yeah, and I was like,
it's my indigenous tiara. It's my indigenous tiara. You're not supposed to share that part. But in any case, there is a lot of human redefining behind the artifact. So, sometimes we grew up in a time, and luckily, we're both turning 60. He's just 2 years older than myself, or 1 year or something. But yeah, anyway, we're both turning 60. We're not the little kids anymore. And we have accountabilities. And you know, it's interesting when you're in your 50s, now you can begin to set criteria. Prior to then, you got to live by someone's criteria, perform by someone's criteria. That's how you do it in Hawaii. Yeah. You learn a whole repertoire of dancing for many years. For what? So that at one point you can begin to create and choreograph your own dreams and teach that to the generations that need you. So sometimes in our Hawaiian world, we're trained no better. It's better not to ask if you're not willing to go 100% in it. It's because once you ask and a part is given to you, you're accountable for that. And if you're going to misuse that, then we believe that, you know, there's going to be some imbalance that's going to happen to your life or the life that you share with others. So, you know, it's better not to ask unless you're prepared to ask. So it's not like college. You can just go select your courses and just get in there. You know, the Hawaiian university system is a little bit more committed. Yeah, it's a little bit more stringent. And you want to step in, you better be willing to go all the way, or better to step out. It's better for all parties. Don't come in half, you know, half. That's dangerous. You got to come in full. And so that's that criteria. And Kealiʻi, I've heard Kealiʻi, and you know, he's mostly very generous, but there are times when he had to put people straight because sometimes people's intentions were wrongly aligned. Easy for ask, but nice the words, but behind the words is something a little bit pupuka, and we have to reserve that right to say no.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and part of this is when people come, when I've done semi-mass workshops in the past, you know, like I said, I start off with the easiest and simplest, and what people have to realize is that desire and outcome don't always connect. Yeah, it doesn't always connect. I love lauhala goods and things like that. I'm pretty good with my hands. I like to call myself the jack of all trades, but master of none. Yeah, and although I know how to prep challah leaves and strip them and all that kind of stuff, I don't have a propensity for it. I recognize that. Yeah, I can make a mat, but the mat can be all pu'upu'u-ish and the edges might be crooked, and I don't like produce that kind. No matter how hard I tried, I get the technique, but I don't have the aesthetic. Yeah, and it's the same thing with cordage, with this particular art form. You know, getting back to what he said about craft. You know, nothing against macrame because that's kind of how I started. But you know, a lot of people who don't know what the connotations of Pu'upu'u is, and the importance of aha and kaula and all of those kinds of things, that they go, oh, it's so cute, you're making macrame. You know, and my hackles go up right away. You know, and you know, the hand like pa, real fast. You know, kind. I'm going to slap your mouth. That's not macrame. Nothing wrong with macrame, but this is not macrame. Yeah, this is much deeper and stuff. So, so the propensity is one thing. Yeah. And what I find is that sometimes if I'm teaching a group of 20, the real basic kind of stuff and easy stuff, that the desire to do that doesn't match up with the outcome, and they get really frustrated. Yeah, they get frustrated. And the thing about cordage is that you have to not get mad. Like with any art form, you don't want to put that energy into what you're doing. Yeah, and so oftentimes I'll say, okay, and I can tell already that this person going to have really hard time tying a shoelace. Yeah, and much less being able to do a Pu'upu'u. So the pu'alu, which is the most common, you know, we try to finish that, and then, you know, I will decide if somebody has the propensity to move to the next level. Yeah, and I have that right. Like Taupuri said, if I'm the teacher, I will feed what I think can be digested. And some people never get past the first course. Yeah, and it's okay. It's fine. Might be eha. Yeah, but that's fine. Not everybody is a Miss Aloha Hula, no matter how much they want it. Yeah, and for me, that's the kind of thing. So it's the reality of the situation, you know, and things. And so some people get very angry about that, and you know, and they blame me. And like, don't blame me that you cannot tie your shoelace. Yeah, and stuff. So I've become very persnickety, and a little bit oi about things like that. Just a smidge.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, you can get an understanding why that is. You know, again, if we're only accountable for this moment, then our accountabilities, our concern, our field of concern is just very immediate to us. But we don't have such thing as an immediate field of concern. Our field of concern is cyclic. It's about ancestors, and it's about the children to come. So it's never just about us and now. You know, it's about that eternality of it. You know, our decisions today has to work for those coming. And so we have to, you know, we have to be quite careful. Now, especially because of cord. And again, it's not just a cord. So even though you're working with Japanese sisal or Egyptian cotton, you know, after a while, it's the medium. We still call it kaula. And by default of calling it kaula, we're beginning to indigenize our relationship to that foreign fabric. And if you look at the word kaula, I invited some of you unfamiliar with that, you know, if you're unfamiliar with it, look it up in the dictionary and look at all of its spellings. Don't just stuck on the first one. You're going to find when you replace the meaning, you're going to understand exactly why we don't let our strings get corded up, or we don't let people that come frustrated to get them on knotted, they throw them. Oh, that's not good. Because it's not just string. Once we commit that string to extend, to participate in the extension of that culture, it's not a foreign string anymore. It becomes an important ieve, a connection. And so we don't let people which, you know, that will mess it up and tangle. That's, you know, that's a bad thing to keep cord tangled and just leave it. We say you can get nuts. Yeah. So so we have to luckily, you know, there's a few people out in the community that love to lament the loss of our culture, but I really think what's given us is what we exactly need to make good this generation and prepare this generation to secure the next generation and therefore. So, you know, even if we have to recreate things, we have enough of our culture to recreate it, transport some of the things we know in hula in other areas. Leadership, indigenous leadership as a way of student success in academia, we weren't born into that. We have to create it. And so, you know, that's the commitment we got to drive home. Because again, although we use this in college, and because we do know that we need all kinds of education, the indigenous and the non-indigenous education, we need it all. And we can have it all. Not such things, we've got to choose only one. We can have it all. And so we got to take what works. And, but sometimes to access the indigenous ways requires more than just paying a tuition and meeting the GE, the general education, you know, criteria to get into that experience. There's still more layers. And where the university is not ready to, they don't know how to put it down in the policies, is we got to get the ancestral connections there. That if you want to receive this, we got to figure out, we got to build a rubric of some sorts to say, you know, okay, this somehow, this attaches to the ancestors and the descendants. Therefore, we have to approach this very delicately. This is not just a haphazard interest area. So I like hula because hula is great. You know, you put all the good dancers forward, And all the emerging good dancers, you know, they go second row, third row, and the ones way, way, way in the back, you know, they get hope. They're still on the stage. Because if they're not, if no more hope, they gotta drive van. They gotta be dressed up person. But they're still in hula. That's a beautiful thing. But you know, I come from Halau Kekuhi, and when I began dancing, some of the dances we learn on stage while performing. We'll put in the fourth row, third row, and the senior dancers that knew the dancers would be ahead of us, and we'd follow, and eventually we'd end up in the front row. So, you know, this is a thing about what Kealiʻi is talking about, that, you know, you can't just look at the end product, is that I want that, without realizing that is a face of a deeper process, and we've got to be willing to enter it. So, Kealiʻi, you've dabbled into EA. Can you? I see you. You're in your tomb. Yeah, I see you. You look like you're in your. Like I was in Egypt, but for somehow transported into your. You went Egyptian on me. Can you share some of your artifacts back there? Look like some people laying down, standing up. Look like I'm in a cave or something.
Well, you know, first, because I knew I was doing this today, I had to reverse my entire office, my entire workspace, because normally I am in a cave because the lighting comes in a different way. So all of this stuff that's behind me is usually on that side.
Okay.
Yeah, and because you was like, okay, make sure you get light that. Okay, make sure you get the kaina. Okay, make sure the kaina. I was like, okay. And so there's a few things here, and like I said, jack of all trades. I like working with my hands, and so EA weaving also was part of my growing up in the '80s and experimenting. And so over here, I was in a class last year with Kumula Ausing. Yeah, so this baga,
wow,
is a ki'i amakua for us, for my family. So for some strange reason, for the past 35 years, I have been saving my hair. Every time I cut, I would put them away. Yeah, and then I never knew why. This is why. Yeah, 30 years later. And it's dyed with ohia charcoal, and this is coyote teeth that I want to go file down individually so that it look like human teeth. Yeah. And then my cousin who passed last year, when I dyed this, I put a little bit of her ashes in it as well. And then there's a little pu'olo inside with some of her bone fragments. So she, for now, watches over me. Yeah, cannot prevent too much, but then she can follow you home and kick your butt and stuff. Anyway, so yeah, and so I'm working on a dog one now. Here's another one. I gotta do the teeth. I gotta do the lips still yet. So this crest will have dog hair on top. It's not traditional in that sense, but it'll be good for me because I have 5 girls, 5 of our Leo who are family members who passed over the past 30 years. So they will be in this. This is going to be their repository and stuff. So bringing it to a different place, just like Taupuri does with Pu'upu'u. Yeah, moving into a different space and making it meaningful for me. Yeah. And then get all the different kind of Pu'upu'u back there. Hard to see, yeah, because the sun stays shining. Hang on.
Okie dokie. So let me thank you for sharing that. You know, of course, you know, as you're talking, I'm trying to look. Yeah, what is back there?
Oh, yeah, all the regular stuff that you've seen before. You know, the hui, the hui knot. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. A lot of stuff.
So, you know, one of the things that, and I saw that Hanalei Marzan is on this, and Hanalei and Kealiʻi has served as scholars in residence at the University of Hawaii at Hilo for a number of years, and we've traveled together, going to other indigenous communities to learn. And some of the things we forgot, they continue to remember. Some of the things they forgot, we still have. So, it's an important piece of that Moana Nui Akea fabric. The idea that, we're being Hawaii is just being independent, that's only part truth. The other truth is we belong. We're very dependent on our oceanic relatives. But Hanalei and I and Kealiʻi, we're kind of a team, and we create things, and and everybody has their little proficiencies, and we share proficiencies. But we've been talking to put together an AHA conference, and that AHA conference is interesting because again, we receive the artifacts, but we got to create everything else. So the terminology, the people that contributed to the safeguard of Pu'upu'u wrote it in a different language from a different brain. So we got to kind of reinterpret it in our language. We got to come up with different names for those Pu'upu'u or some of those specific knots, processes. So we're putting this together, and I think and then of course this whole COVID thing is making us become very creative. So when we're ready to platform that and share that, of course we'll begin to invite the community into it as phase one into growing this Pu'upu'u. Obviously, its intention in the past was to transport the bowls, big bowls that inside had the sacred property of the ali'i. Well, times have changed since then. Isn't it interesting, though, we have not let go of the Pu'upu'u? Yeah? We give it new life. We give it new meaning. It's like those 200-year-old dances. The people that created them are a long time gone. Sometimes we don't even know what those dances mean, but we still dance them, and we bring new meaning to it. So this is a great time. We have a few minutes. Do any of you have... Now, the question is about Pu'upu'u. So if you're asking Kealiʻi when his next concert, can you guys handle that on your guys' own platform? But if you have any questions, let me check the chat. Just put it in the chat. And yeah.
I see one.
Okay, go for it.
And it's a real easy answer. But one is, do you feel that Pu'upu'u and musical strings connect or intersect in my perspective? Personally, for me, I cannot answer for anybody else. No. And part of that is because I'm not a great guitarist. I know like 5 chords. Yeah. And all my songs is 5 chords. Okay. And I don't know the name of the chords. Okay. And so when I'm in concert, and if it's a big concert or a small concert, and you see me playing, the sound guy, this is a big secret, I have to kill you all now. Sound guy, I'll start the mele, and so my guitar sound is up. And then as the mele progresses, my guitar gets taken out because I'm so junk at the kind. And I'm not hurt. I'm good. I'm good with that. Yeah. And I only hold the guitar because I like cover my belly. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
So yeah, no, not for me.
Yeah, no. Different vibrations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kaula, different kinds of vibrations. Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Let's see. Oh, okay. No questions
Okay.
that I can see.
Okay, so Kealiʻi,
Yes.
when you did, and we have to like put you in a butter bowl, burn you and on the pulehu, put you in a butter bowl, and hopefully we don't confuse that with.
What you like? What you like?
No, I know. What is the hyena of all of this? There is, when in our world, in our hula world, a hyena plays large because that's an important feature in a period of our lyrics, the culture of mele. We have, those couplets, and at the end there's always a ha'ina. And whether the song is 5 verses, 10 verses, 20 verses, there was a time when we always had a ha'ina, an opportunity to echo the most important thing in the song. What is the ha'ina of all this, you think?
Well, I think that, as an individual, as a Kanaka, as a human, I think we have, throughout our journey, we have all kinds of ha'ina. Yeah, depending on what you're doing, because we're multifaceted beings. Yeah, so heha kaha'ina of my singing, heha kaha'ina of recording, heha kaha'ina of Pu'upu'u, heha kaha'ina of my ki'i au makua here. Yeah, and each one will have a different ha'ina. But for me personally, the ha'ina is at the end of the day, because when you hala, you hala alone, in a sense. Yeah, you might have your family around, and so for me, it's what kind of vessel have I been?
Mm.
Yeah, just like that vessel that you put into the Pu'upu'u. What kind of vessel have I been? When you look at a person, have I hanini'd what my insides out to my family, out to the community, out to whatever ripple effect that we each have individually. For me, that's the ha'ina. And so if this has lived a little bit better, the Pu'upu'u has lived a little bit better because I was partially a vessel to that, then that's the ha'ina, and I'm good. Noni ha'ina ho. Yeah. And same thing with songs, same thing with whatever it is that personally I do. What kind of vessel have I been? And do I deserve, like in the variant of the end of mele pule, of this several pule that we have. When we go, palalau hala, how makaiolea kōkō. Yeah, all of that. The Pu'upu'u is one variant. The other variant is Kōkō Pu'upu'u. Yeah, and that being that I can get so old, my skin gonna get the kind all wrinkled like dried lauhala leaves. I'm gonna be blind as a rat, that kind of thing. And I'm so old and feeble that I have to be placed into a Kōkō Pu'upu'u. Yeah, because what you put into your Kōkō Pu'upu'u is precious, is stuff that you want to hold. Yeah. And so when a kupuna is a certain age and they cannot walk anymore, then you make a Kōkō Pu'upu'u for them, or a Kōkō Pu'upu'u-ish thing, and you carry them around. Yeah, kind of thing. And so that's, to answer your question, I hope that kind of did. That it's not just about me, it's about what it is that we can do.
Well, I'll do my best to carry you around on my back and not drag your feet on the ground, because I noticed you're wearing those ugly house slippers.
Oh, yeah. Shut up.
Perfect.
Look at that. I get my fuzzy.
No, at least that one, no more poofy things on it.
Well, lucky I won't put on pants yet, because people think that, you only can see from here up. Lucky I'm not wearing, I just wearing bebaris. Okay?
Yes, we do have regulations. But, friends, thank you for joining us. And, we come from a people that accepts the entire life cycle. And we truly believe if we live very quality lives, that when our time to pass, somebody's going to name their child after us, and we're back there again. But that only happens if we live really model lives. We make hard decisions, and our children sometimes are our students. If they see us making the right sacrifices, getting those academic accolades in place for what? To advance the people, not just to advance self. The indigenous self is a collective entity. So, we have a great opportunity in 2020 and many more years to take the necessary steps to really solidify who we are and who we want to be. We haven't lost anything. It's in our bodies. It might be sleeping. Our job is just find the right trigger, the right community, make the right sacrifices, and those memories are going to come forward again. We've seen it over and over again. We don't have to read about it. It's in our families. It's in those stories are in our own families and communities. So yes, we all will have an opportunity to craft by the way we live our song. And you know, you can either be conscious or unconscious about it. That's really up to you. I'd rather be conscious myself. I want to know what kind of song I'm crafting every day, what my mo'opuna going to remember of me, what my wife, my children, my students, my community, my administration that I work with and I like to love to challenge. You know, how have I contributed to the well-being of Hawaii? That's an opportunity. And we want to invite you to make some contribution to that. Don't get caught up with just the self, because there's a lot of disappointment when we just deal with the self. Sometimes deal with the nation also, contribute to the nation. Whether Hawaii, if you live in Hawaii, you're committed to some degree to contribute to this indigenous nation. If you live somewhere else in somebody else's indigenous territories, I'm hoping that we have the abilities to contribute to their fortitude also. But think about the quality of our ha'ina. I've experienced in my short 57 years, there's been a number of hula masters that taught hula all their life, but not sustainably. They've taught it for, in casual places, or just, non-committed. And they reach a particular time in their life and they look back, they go, oh, who's going to carry on all this knowledge? And, and they desperately look for a vessel. Sometimes it's like that, and sometimes it has to be that way for some. But if this Mōkaulele can help you to begin to get serious about what you bring to this world, and if it's of value, share it. Find people, sometimes hula teachers don't wait for the person applied to the hula school. Sometimes they ask for the baby while the baby's still in the mara, because they already know there's a legacy that needs to happen. We've only received what we have because somebody left it behind for us. We cannot mina what the ancestors took with them. That was their choice and they had to make that choice. But many kupuna left enough things for us to continue on. So let us come to that with huge respect, reverence. The world will make it shallow. The world will want to make it shallow because if it's shallow, it's easily marketable. Yeah, you can sell it. But it's kind of hard to sell a connection. It is possible, but we won't let it. Yes? So visit us, Mōkaulele. I think we have I'll send, just pay attention. There's a little, I think Hanalei might be next. Hanalei, you there? Hanalei, when you going on? Look, Hanalei, I don't read hands. Check, go unmute. I gotta unmute him. Tiffany, try unmute him. Let him talk. He don't talk anyway, Hanalei. He only gives hand signals. Chat, Hanalei. Tiffany, where are you? You see Hanalei? Okay, there, Hanalei.
Yeah, aloha.
When are you going on?
Next week.
Next week. And what you talking about?
My talk is entitled Ahu Kinolau. So it's just speaking to my own experience of all of the various practices that I've learned over the years and how that they've all merged together in various ways to really support this idea of Ahu Kinolau, or the connections that we have with our materials and fibers and how we engage with them.
So you see, this is really not about textbook, somebody wrote about us, we researched it, and then we're talking about that. That has a place, maybe, but a small place. We're talking about authentic experiences, growths, sometimes cultural risk that we have to live by and be ready to answer to. But we welcome you back next week, same time, Thursday, 4 to 5. You know, let your friends know. But you know, if they're not interested in this kind of stuff, don't let them know this. Keep this platform for you. Yeah. You know, you're sometimes, when we have a community that can address the spirit easily, sometimes you bring the wrong person in and the kanugo funny kind. Yeah. So, yeah. But we hope you learned something. We hope you go home and think about it. Look in the mirror and say hello to your ancestors because they're all there. And no worry, Kealiʻi, when you're old, I'm going to drag you around. I'm going to carry you. I'm going to make you Pu'upu'u with gold lame cod.
You better. Everybody heard. Well, look at you.
And then, of course, there's Hanalei. And there's Hanalei, who towers above Kealiʻi and I, you know, so. But we're a threesome, so. Mahalo, everybody. Thank you again, Kealiʻi, for sharing your story. And we wish you the best students. Yeah, that's a blessing to have, is the best kind of student. So good luck to all of us. Ahui ho no kako. Nice to see all of your faces. Bye-bye. Have a nice evening.
We hope.